Hey, what's up? This is Jake here in Jake's shop. So this is going to be part 2 and actually undercoating the underside of this car. So like I said in the previous video, after I've prepped everything, got the 2K primer on there. It's a really good etching primer, U-pull stuff. Ended up letting it sit for about a day. I probably wouldn't want to let it set for much more than that, maybe 2, depending on temperature, of course. But you know, if it hardens up too much, the products could always have less of a tendency to really want to etch in and stick in. So I'm going to be using 3M Body Schutz undercoating. This particular one's a rubberized undercoating. It's flexible. It actually has a lot of really good characteristics. It'll stick to bare metal, painted surfaces, you name it. The one thing that's not good about this particular one is that it, well, you're not really supposed to paint over it. They do make another product, and it even says in the directions here, if you want a different product to actually apply paint over, they say to use their water-based undercoating, which is a 08804. So yeah, and there's also another one, no cleanup high coverage Body Schutz PN 08964. So anyways, this is a 08864. So there's plenty of products out there. I've used this stuff in the past and really liked it. I like the color that lays down on it, especially, you know, just underside of the car. I'm not trying to be too fancy. I just want it sealed. I want it resistant to impacts. And so yeah, I don't really know, and it's really hard to tell how much this stuff will cover. Coverage is always a gray area, right? Because it's really dependent on how thick, how much pressure you run, all those different things. I'm going to test it myself. I can't remember exactly what pressures I ran when I shot this stuff. I want to say it's probably going to be somewhere between 25 and 60 psi. It's going to depend on distance. It's going to depend on what your your look is. My assumption is the higher pressures are going to make it thin out a little bit. The lower pressures are going to make it tack up and beat up a little bit. And just like, yeah, I don't know, you guys probably haven't used it, but a hopper gun or whatever, when you're actually texturing walls, very similar process. You raise up the pressure, you get a lot smaller texture. You lower the pressure, it kind of chunks up a little bit. Now this stuff is thick. It says in the direction you're supposed to shake the junk out of it. I am going to also stick a stir stick in this, and I'm going to stir it up really well before I actually screw the gun on, which is another part of this process. So this is just a U-pull cheap gun. I've actually used this in the past. I cleaned it up pretty well with thinner. I'm not running a pressure regulator here, so that's another really interesting piece of this. Obviously, if you have a regulator, like I do over here on the wall, you're going to have to adjust the pressure accordingly depending on the length of the hose, the size of the hose, you name it. So I have about a 25-foot hose on this thing. It's a bigger hose, not that big. I don't think it's 5/8, but it's bigger than your standard 3/8. So anyways, and I'm just going to kind of play with the pressure at the reg on the wall until I get it to what I like what I'm seeing. You know, it'll probably pick up out of the gun somewhere around 20-25, but I imagine I'll probably run it a little higher, and, you know, moving at a certain speed as well. So I will go ahead and I'm going to test one of these bottles with coverage once I get the pressure I like. I'll report back, and on the next little clip that I'll shoot next, I'll actually maybe show me shooting some of it. This stuff's nasty. It's solvent based. It needs to dry for quite a while, I think, before you mess with it too much, and I'll read the directions some more to determine what that actually is. But solvent cleanup, wear respirators, wear masks. I've got a ventilation system in here. I'll make sure to kick my 2-year-old out of here as well when I do that, and go from there. So I will yeah, I don't really see on here what it says for dry times. Yeah, it says on here 40 to 60 psi as well, so kind of like I had thought. Could always read directions before I do this, so sometimes it helps. But I don't know, I had really good luck with it in the past. I'm thinking it's going to take 2 or 3 of these, at least 2. More likely 3 to do this whole part of the car, you can see. And I'm on a rotisserie, obviously, now, which is really nice. I'm able to really get to everything. If you were trying to do this while the car is sitting on the ground, it's just a nightmare. For one, when you're tipping the bottle back, it's going to be a little bit of an issue when you're using a gun. The aerosol ones work pretty good. A lot more expensive when you're buying all those different aerosols. They're not going to have the same amount of volume or coverage because you're also buying the liquid and everything else inside them. The other thing about this stuff too is after you think you've used one of these, because you can see that the dipstick goes about to the bottom. You know, it's sitting about a 1/4 inch maybe off the bottom. Dump the new can. Once you've used some of the next can, dump the rest in. Just trying to use it up as much as possible. It's going to solidify in the bottom of this can depending on how long it's been there. And you're going to really just want to mix it. And even while you're using it, mix it. It's got a lot of solids in it, so they constantly want to settle down with gravity. So yeah, hopefully that's a little bit of information, and I'll do a little coverage. We'll see how far one goes, report back, and show you what kind of pressures I'm using, and I'll actually video me shooting a little bit of it on. Okay, so I went ahead and shot one can to kind of show you what kind of coverage I've got. Now this is a fairly light coat. I just really wanted coverage. I'm not trying to build this up. You can kind of see how it looks. Pretty good. You know, it's got a nice crinkle to it. It actually, close up like that, it doesn't look as good, but it looks really good in person. You're just gonna have to trust me on that. You know, the stuff's really specific. It says don't do it on anything that's gonna be heated. You don't put it on self-edge primers. You can put it on a 2K primer. So that's, you know, another reason why I used a 2K primer for this application. So yeah, you know, it's real stringy. It's kind of like glue, you know, as you're shooting it on there. I'll go ahead and take some video of me actually shooting the product on. It goes real quick, and you know, it's pretty smelly. I've got the fans running and whatnot when I've got this on, you know, and I'm gonna come back up here, and there's a little bit of touch up I'm gonna do right in there, obviously. So I'm doing it pretty light. If you want to do multiple coats, if you want really good sound deadening, you know, you're gonna be using quite a few of these. I'm really just trying to give it a nice, good protection against impact, rock chips, stuff like that. Yes, there's still some sound deadening there, but most of my sound deadening is going to be on the inside for this stuff. So the other thing, the gun I showed you earlier is not the right one. I went ahead and adapted it. Good old tape there. Luckily, the tube, I was able to spin it out and to get it down a little further where I needed to the bottom of the can. And, you know, it worked. Obviously, it's the same exact style of gun they use on a lot of different applicators. You just want to make sure it's got the right threads, so to make it work. But yeah, I'm running it at the reg at about 40, a little over 40. Obviously, when you pull the trigger, the gauge drops down, so I tested that. With it down, it's probably only running about 38 at the reg, and that's looking pretty good. I don't really want to run much more pressure than that because it was laying down so fast. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll shoot some more here next and show you how it goes on, and we'll see some finished product after that. Okay, here we go. Applicator's ready to rock, and we'll shoot some. Okay, so that's another can. So I'm going to be 4 into this before I'm done. A couple little touch-up spots. You know, when you get at different angles of the car, you can really start to see it better. But overall, I like it. It looks really good, and I'll show one little wrap-up scene of it getting wrapped up here after I get the other cans opened up, and we'll go from there. One thing to keep in mind is when you go to do cleanup on these two, it dries fast. I mean, comes out of the gun real wet, real solidy, but then it's vaping off really fast. I got the fans on, respirator on, so yeah, we'll finish the rest of this and go from there.